Hello everyone, my name is Benjamin Debuté and welcome to this new DCbrain webinar about hydrogen. It's actually the third webinar we organized this year about this, I would say, new energy, talking obviously about green hydrogen. And the topic today is how will European cooperation pave the way for an easier hydrogen implementation. As you have all followed, there have been a lot of announcements to invest more money into the hydrogen development in Europe, and we will discuss that today. So today with us, we have four energy experts, starting with Colette Lewiner, who is a French energy expert, senior energy advisor for Capgemini, also on the board of EDF, so electricity France.
Bon.
The current president and CEO of TSO in the South. Finish, if you can hear me, anyway, who is the co-founder and CEO of DCbrain. So before we start, just a few rules. Please try to respect about 20 minutes per intervention, including question. Everyone can write and ask questions directly into the tab on the top right of the screen. We'll try to answer them at the end of each presentation. Again, thanks a lot for our four experts, and thanks everyone for joining us for this event. And Colette, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Benjamin. Hello, everybody. So I'm happy to introduce this webinar on hydrogen. As you know, hydrogen is a very popular subject today. And I want to share quickly some thoughts on this interesting subject. First of all, as you all know, we have different colors. When you talk of hydrogen, we have gray hydrogen, we have blue hydrogen, and we have green hydrogen. Today, hydrogen is mainly produced with fossil fuels called gray hydrogen, but it is very polluting. It is emitting a lot of greenhouse gases. If you take the hydrogen used for industry, the pollution generated by this production is equivalent to the emissions of two countries together, which is UK and Indonesia. So very, very important. The second type of hydrogen would be blue hydrogen. It is like gray hydrogen, but it is with installation what's called CCUS, which is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. However, today, and I'm sure Dominique Mockly knows that quite well, CCUS installations are still very expensive. This could go down, those costs could go down with probably new technology, perhaps like cement, inclusion of CO2 in cement, or carbon, or scale effect, building a lot of those sort of installation. And of course, if carbon price goes up significantly, I think it has at least to double to make those installations competitive. The third type of hydrogen, and we're going to speak of that one, it is what's called green hydrogen. It is produced with water, electrolysis of water. You have different types. I'm not going to get into details of electrolyzers. You have the more mature technology, which is alkaline technology, and you have PEM, proton exchange membrane technology, which is less mature but better adapted to stop and go type of operations, which could be well adapted if you use electrolyzers when you have an excess of renewables. We're going to come back on that. So I would say, what's new? Hydrogen is not a new issue. I think it has been relaunched at the G7 meeting in Japan in 2018, 2 years ago. And not surprisingly that it was in Japan, because Japan has always been a big proponent of hydrogen. So what's new? First of all, I think that, of course, if you want green hydrogen, you want to have green electricity. And the intermittent, renewable type of electricity, I would say solar, PV solar, and wind offshore and onshore, the cost of those energies has gone down in a spectacular way. If you take the case of solar, the cost of solar generation has gone down by 18%, 18%, each year during 10 years. So it is impressive. The onshore wind today is, if you don't take into account the effects on the grid, which you have to take into account, but it is competitive, for example, with existing nuclear. So this is one of the reasons. I would say also green hydrogen is a way to decarbonize, I would say, let's say 15% of our economy that you cannot do with electricity. For example, some industrial processes like steel, like refineries, and very heavy transportation trucks, for example, you cannot use batteries because it would be much too heavy. Huh? So it will allow to decarbonize this part of the economy we cannot do in another way. And I would say the third point is on the grids. You know that with a lot of renewables, they are intermittent. And you have to balance on the electricity grid. It's not the case on the gas grid because you can store gas. But in the electricity grid, you have to balance at each moment consumption, which is variable, not the same each day of the week or each season, and with generation. And now the generation is becoming variable. So you need some storage. Today, the storage is done, large storage is done thanks to hydro, pumped hydro, and this allows to store big quantities of electricity, but the sites are all equipped, more or less, all equipped in Europe. So you have to think of adding other type of storage. Batteries, of course, but batteries, you can store a few hours of electricity, not more. If not, the volumes would be too big. So hydrogen is a way to do that, and you could produce hydrogen when you have an excess of electricity, store it, and then produce electricity thanks to fuel cells when you need electricity. So here are all the advantages. As was said by Benjamin at the beginning, there are big funding. Europe has decided to fund between now and 2040 between 180 and 470 billion euros. France has a program of 7 billion, Germany of 9 billion. So it's quite really impressive. The European objective is to build 4 gigawatts of electrolysis by 2024, in 4 years, and 80 gigawatt by 2030. This is a lot of, if you think of the generation you need to do that, it is the equivalent of 80 nuclear plants. So it's a very, very ambitious plan. Huh? And investments in electrolyzers would represent 25 billion euros, but the good thing, it will avoid 82 million tons of CO2. Many players are positioning themselves in this field. Of course, you have the traditional players, and in Europe, we are lucky to have 2 champions, which are Air Liquide and Linde in Germany. Utilities, for example, EDF has invested in McPhee. Oil and gas companies, recently there was an agreement between BP, the oil company, and Ørsted. Ørsted used to be an oil company, but now it's focusing on offshore wind to produce, this would be to produce hydrogen. Of course, you have the GRTs, the TSOs, the gas TSOs. Dominique is representing Terega. You have GRT Gas and many others. It is also a question of sovereignty. I think if we think of renewables, we lost in Europe the sovereignty on solar panels. We used to have solar panels with Spanish, for example, solar panels manufacturers in Europe. They are totally dead. Now we are importing all solar panels from China. Batteries, we are trying to regain some sovereignty, but if you look at the plans for the future, you have the gigafactories was able to produce enough batteries for 500 electrical vehicles per year, are going to be built in Asia, mainly in China. And you know all about the problem of rare earths and rare metals. They are not all, of course, extracted in China, but they are refined in China, and more or less 90% of the cathodes, which is part of what you need for the battery, are produced in China. So we are losing sovereignty on this. So we could really, if we cooperate well, if we are good in technology and investment, we could regain sovereignty in hydrogen. But just be careful on one thing. China has launched a hydrogen plan in 2018, 2 years before us. And I can tell you that they are very dynamic. Okay, now what are the key challenges? One challenge is cost. Green hydrogen costs more or less today 3 times more than gray hydrogen. So we need to get those costs down and to get to around 1.5 euro per kilo. How can we do that? I think first, reducing the electrolysis cost, and the objective is to reduce it from the installations from around 700 euros per kilowatt to 300 in 2025, 200 in 2030, thanks to, I would say, there are prototypes today, and taking lesson learned from those prototypes. I would say also reducing the electrolyzers cost as such, and scale effect. And if you think of what happened in solar and wind, scale effect is really something you can count on. With large investments, you can think that the cost will go down. We shall see. Now, you more or less, and this is very schematic, you have two ways of doing that, 2 business models. One would be to use the electrolyzers when you have an excess of intermittent electricity. Then you have to, if you want to wheel the electricity until the place where you produce hydrogen, and you can think that then you produce hydrogen near factories. And the second one would be to collocate, meaning to put at the same place hydrogen and renewables. And this I learned 2 days ago about a project in Mongolia, which is a region where there is a lot of wind in China, where they cannot too much wheel this electricity to places where there is a lot of population, the east part of China. And they have now projects of putting together hydrogen production with renewables. By doing this, you also avoid some costs, what's called balance of plant costs, that are common to the 2 types of installations. So you see, you have here 2 different models. Now, nevertheless, 80 gigawatt of green electricity is a real challenge. Extra electricity generation. You can do more renewables. I think you should not stop safe nuclear. Nuclear does not emit greenhouse gases, so you should not stop it. And so this is 2 things, and perhaps you can mitigate, not do all green, but do green and blue with hopefully CCUS installations, which would be cheaper. And there are other type of projects which are thinking of producing the green electricity in very sunny regions, for example, North Africa, Morocco, whatever, and then importing hydrogen, which is difficult to import at those large distances. If you have to cool it, you have to cool it at minus 253 degrees, it's very cold, or more to produce ammonia, for example, with hydrogen. So you would have green ammonia, and wherever in Europe you get that, you would separate again ammonia and hydrogen. So you see, this is a real challenge, has to be taken into account. Of course, impact on the grids, more or less impact on the electricity grid according to the model you use, as I explained before. And then you will have also hydrogen logistic. I think that Dominique Mockly will cover this. You can mix hydrogen in gas pipelines today. You can perhaps refurbish gas pipelines to become hydrogen pipelines, and you can build dedicated hydrogen pipelines. I think this will be explained later, so I'm not going to get into the detail. And if you use, of course, hydrogen for transportation, for example, you will need to have fueling stations for hydrogen. Other issues, I would say safety. You remember from what you learned at school that if you do H2 plus oxygen, it gives water, but it's a very exothermic reaction, so it explodes. And hydrogen is a small molecule, it's the smallest molecule, and it can go, so some steel, pipeline steel can be porous on those molecules, so they could escape, and it could be quite dangerous. So this has to be also monitored. And then, of course, as for all new technology, you have competition with other technologies. For example, batteries, electricity, perhaps gas as well, which is not totally green, but can be very cheap if you take shale gas in the US, for example. Huh? And you will have also, like for electricity, as for electricity, you would have origin certificates to monitor. Green, you have to be sure you label your hydrogen as a green hydrogen. Okay, so I tried very quickly to give a very broad view on this very interesting sector. There is a lot of funding. I think what's important is that this funding is done in a sound way. The allocation of the cash for projects. Of course, projects should get public funding, but private funding as well. Monitoring of these allocations. We don't want to reproduce what we saw in solar panels, which is there was a lot of money put into renewables with special tariffs, and all this. Or not all of the money, but I mean, part of this went to buy PV solar installations that were produced in China. So we did not develop with all this money, with the feed-in tariff, etc. We did not develop an industry in Europe. So I think this time we really want not only to have the green hydrogen, but to develop a real industry in Europe for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Colette, for covering those different topics about hydrogen, from technical to economical, and obviously the sovereignty points, which is, I think, quite important now. Especially when we talk about European investment into this new sector. I see that some people answered the polls on the right of your screen. Colette, maybe you can comment on those.
I'm not there. I have to load it. So I had, yes. I don't see so the first question was, what sectors will adopt first green hydrogen? Industry, transportation, electricity. How do you see the answer? I see submit votes.
Yeah, and so I see that 38% of people answered industry, and about 30% for transportation and electricity.
I think industry will probably be the first one, because there is already hydrogen in industry, so it's just changing gray hydrogen for green hydrogen. Then the question was about the cost. When will green hydrogen be competitive with gray hydrogen? So if you can tell me what was the answers?
So 50% of people answered 2035, 45% answered 2030, and 9% 2025.
Yeah, and well, what's the official assumption is to 2030, but we shall see. Yeah, and blue hydrogen. Yeah, and blue hydrogen is. It was same question, and the answers.
And 43% said 2035 and 40% 2030.
Okay, so they don't see it really earlier than for grey hydrogen. I would have thought that it could be competitive before, but of course, under the assumption that CCUS installation become themselves competitive, which is not totally a given. No?
Going maybe to questions, just a quick reminder that everyone can ask question on the far right, top right of the screen. But I have maybe one question. In your opinion, how does Europe can avoid the mistake of the PV development in the early 2000s? Again, you mentioned it, a lot of money was invested, and at the end of the day, an industry was not created in Europe. How can we avoid that?
I think, first of all, the money has to go. I mean, we don't want to reproduce money going to avoiding taxes or something like that, which was, if you want, the scheme of feed-in tariffs was that the electricity operators has to pay more money, but there was nothing related to the origin of the manufacturers or whatever. So I think we should be careful on that. I think money should go to projects. I think this is the best way to produce your industry. Of course, we will have perhaps more higher carbon price, carbon taxes. So there will be a little bit of that, but I think the funding we are talking about, personally, I believe it should go to improving electrolyzers, improving the whole electrolysis process, improving processes in the industry, storage of hydrogen, perhaps, funding the hydrogen pipelines, etc. I think it should go to the industry in a certain way and not to general taxes to avoid more carbon emission. That's my point of view, at least.
Okay, thanks a lot, Colette. Maybe we can move on to Dominique. Dominique, the floor is yours for your presentation. Thanks again, Colette.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and good morning to everyone. I think the presentation is supposed to be launched by the organizer. Oh, yes. Thank you very much. So for me today, the aim of my presentation and my intervention will be very simple. It will just to tell you how let's say the European TSO organize themselves in order to boost hydrogen in the energy transition. So how and what do we do, and how can we, let's say, improve our common projects in order to speed up that? So just to start, I will give you a broad presentation of what is a TSO, because maybe some of you don't know what it is. A TSO is somebody having pipelines. Today, most of those pipelines are full of methane that they can use for other purposes. You see, for example, for Terega, we have 5,000 kilometers of pipes in the southwest of France. And we also have storages. So these are storage used today for methane, but some of them can also be used in the future for hydrogen. The way it works is rather simple. You balance a network. So you receive flows of gas and you manage let's say the flows in order that the consumptions equals what is required from the main suppliers of gas. So in terms of logics, it's a logistic system. And this logistic system, we are preparing it in order to make it available in the future for hydrogen. And it's mainly what all the TSOs are doing today in order to organize themselves in this way. So now, if I move to broadly, I will switch this one in order to keep within the main time frame. So today, we have many solutions when we look at how hydrogen will be produced and used. and all of that is complementary. So today we don't know exactly how it will develop, how it will be used. For sure, there will be hydrogen produced and hydrogen consumed, so there is no doubt about that. But we have many ways to use it. We can either use it in our own pipelines by blending the existing methane with hydrogen. So all of that has already been studied, so we know what we can do, what we cannot do. And when, for example, blended hydrogen with methane will go above a certain level or a certain threshold, then it's better just to have hydrogen networks working alone with only hydrogen. So these two options are under study, and we know that in a certain number of cases, if the transmission of hydrogen is on short distances, etc., in any case, it would be better just to implement hydrogen networks as it is done today by hydrogen producers. Then these hydrogen networks will be either, let's say, used by converting some existing pipelines into 100% hydrogen, or we will build new hydrogen pipelines. You can tell us, but how do you decide that? So today we have already business cases which are rather clear, where the benefits for the final consumer to use green hydrogen is, in terms of business model, interesting. And so there is business cases where the investment can start in hydrogen dedicated network, mostly for applications like mobility or like industry, and also in areas where there is no connection with the regulated system, which is our own system. So dedicated hydrogen networks between a producer and a consumer will develop rather soon. We have already demands on that, and I think for the other TSO it's the same. So this kind of market will develop, and what we are preparing, because these applications are mainly local applications, we are preparing also for larger scale H2 hydrogen market, because you know that, in fact, and it was highlighted also by Colette, hydrogen will also be produced at a cheap price in a longer term with massive solar panels or wind turbines directly implementing and developing hydrogen without going through the electricity network. So it will be a direct link between the production of a local electricity and production of hydrogen, and then this hydrogen, which will be produced at low cost, will have to be transported, and for that pipelines are interested. Why are pipelines interested? Because the volume of hydrogen that you can put in your pipeline, in the existing pipelines, with some modification of course, are the equivalent. If I take one of the link that we have between France and Spain, for example, if we use one of those links, it will be the equivalent of 9 high voltage electricity link. So it's much better a solution to transport hydrogen in a let's say in a mode which is a gas mode, instead of transforming into electricity and then manufacturing the electricity or supplying hydrogen for the industrial applications directly when it's needed. We also study a certain number of other alternatives. This is using hydrogen to decarbonize industry with, let's say, mixing hydrogen and CO2 to produce methane. So, and methane entering into our existing pipes. And it's sometimes interesting to do that just to decarbonize the industry, or also to store some, or to feed or to replace natural gas by decarbonized methane, I would say, because in fact the initial production of this methane allows decarbonization of industry. So these are globally the sort of scopes that we are covering when we are looking at hydrogen from a TSO perspective. Just to illustrate what we are studying all together among the TSOs in Europe. So we are looking at the European hydrogen highways. So the idea is to look at where hydrogen will be produced and utilized in the future. And you can see large pipes going from the south to the north, or from the north to the sea. It just says that hydrogen may be produced where cheap hydrogen will be produced using either wind turbines, typically offshore wind turbines, and solar panels in the south, and alongside or not too far from the pipelines that we have today. You can see also on this slide a certain number of points. Those points are potential storage capacities that we are looking at transforming. These are existing facilities that can easily be transformed into hydrogen storage. So it opens plenty of questions, but the architecture or these sort of backbones already exist, and they can be transformed. And the let's say the horizon that we are looking at, it's 2040, and it comes to the question that was asked to all of you: when do you see cheap hydrogen being massively produced? You said, let's say, roughly 2035. This is what we are looking at also. So we consider that by 2040, we should have an infrastructure ready for transporting and ensuring the logistic of all this cheap hydrogen. So typically, these projects, it's 23,000 kilometers of pipe that could be transformed and will be transformed if the market is there. I just move quickly to another initiative that we have launched. So you have seen this map. It's not the map of Terega, it's the map of the TSOs in Europe, looking at where it's the most interesting to transform the pipelines. We have also structured all of that into a European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, looking at the production, the consumption, the logistic from, let's say, production to distribution, in order to feed all the process of the EPCI process of projects. So the idea is to be ready to present a certain number of projects to develop the vision we have on this clean hydrogen production and consumption in the future. And it's structured like a project with piloting committees, with high-level progress meeting, etc., and addressing not only the industrial part of it, or let's say the project part of it, but also the policymaker platform, the civil society problems, etc. So all this cooperation, so I don't know if you know that it exists, but it has been created, it exists, it works, and people are dedicated some of their time working in this this forum, which for us is key for speeding up the process and also bringing the necessary projects and topics on the table for the people developing the vision in Europe. So for us, it's not only a project which is paper, it's also people, it's teams working and working together in order to present, let's say, projects which are trans-European countries projects. As an example, we have one project there which is presented, we call it LAC Hydrogen, which is part of this overall production of hydrogen and consumption of hydrogen. And you can see LAC, it's a former place where in the past we extracted in France gas. This place has now been fully transformed. We do not extract gas anymore, so the idea is not to speak about gas, but the platform, this industrial platform, has been transformed. And we have pipes going there, and we have also storage facilities not far from here, etc. So the idea was to look at how we can transform this platform in order to implement a fully green electricity model, a fully green hydrogen model, etc. So we have taken the assumption that hydrogen was produced at cheap price in Spain, then through electrolysis and sent through the Enagas gas grid, sent to us to LAC, where in fact we have a need of electricity, so replacing the electricity which is produced there by an electricity which is an hydrogen electricity, so green electricity, and also all the usage in industry that we need locally in terms of gas. So hydrogen will replace in this area most of the energy which is used in the past, and then the electricity produced there will be transmitted to the grid, so there will be a connection to the grid. And some former project that we have that we could not implement just because we had not a solution, like the production of electricity in Os-Marcillon, is supposed to be produced now in LAC at an horizon of 2040, but it's typically the sort of thing that we had imagined in the past that we could not produce. And in terms of storing hydrogen, in this program, we store hydrogen in one of the storage that we have today, which is used for methane, so that we will convert partly into storing hydrogen in order to be sure that the electricity production can be produced continuously. So it's a pan-European between Spain and France cooperation. It's included into the overall grid or former backbone in Europe. And it's also an industrial cooperation with electricity companies, with technical companies, because you have the electrolysis at one point, you have the CCGTs using hydrogen on the other side, and you have all the transformation of the industrial platform in LAC, which is included there. Among the transformation that we have developed, we have developed locally a project in order to make all the grid working together. So it means the grid for the industries working and producing electricity or energy, but also the one consuming those energies. And it's a project that we call Impulse 2025, and that will use hydrogen. So hydrogen is not only something that will be used to produce energy, it will also be used to manage the legacies or the problematics of industry, like CO2 treatment when there are still CO2 being produced, or also adding some hydrogen to a certain number of processes. And to do that, and it's the reason why, let's say, we are also close to DCbrain things. It's why we believe that next to the technology and the hydrogen, managing all together methane, hydrogen, and all these things, and the electricity, will need new balancing technology, mainly relying on the IT. And it's the concept that we have developed, which is called Yobaz, which is, let's say, a full cloud technology available for the future. So in a summary, in a nutshell, you should know that all the TSOs are really committed to making their system develop in the future and adapt to the hydrogen economy. It's for us a big challenge, but it's not something which is not impossible. The cost to address this modification is not as high compared to the objective of cost of low cost hydrogen. We are speaking of tenths of cents and not a euro or whatsoever. So the adaptation is in the let's say scope that allows still hydrogen to be cheap when it's transported through pipes, and it's what you should have in mind. Thank you, and I'm ready to take some questions if the animation has got it.
Thanks a lot, Dominique. Before we move to Cas, because we know he needs to leave at 10, so just maybe one quick question. Maybe we'll go back to another question at the end of the webinar for you, Dominique. So we understood quite well that all the European gas TSO are gathering and getting together to implement this or to create this hydrogen backbone. We also understand that it might be cheaper to do that than other options. So what are the last challenges to deploy this backbone, this hydrogen backbone in Europe?
The main challenge is to go all together at the same speed. I think because at the first time you will put some hydrogen in our pipes, this hydrogen will be present everywhere. So the challenge is to make everybody go at a speed where a progress made on one place is not stopped because the others have not progressed enough. So the main message that we pass to the regulation authorities, etc., is that they should really consider that it's a major topic that should be addressed at a global pace. If it's not globally addressed, there will be, because in fact we will not, in terms of regulation or technical standard, be able to progress on a regular basis. And then you will have a cluster somewhere. and a sort of it will not be open to the rest of the grid. And it's not our willingness. Our willingness is really to make everybody to make to everybody a cheap hydrogen available. And for that, the grid should progress at the same speed everywhere.
Okay, so again, European cooperation between all players.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dominique. And again, we'll get back to more questions at the end of the webinar. And maybe now we can move on to Cas. Cas, thanks again for participating in this webinar, and I'll leave you the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. It's nice to be here and to give you some information about our ports in the northern part of the Netherlands, where we are located. And now I try to go on with the next slide. There it is. So we are a port authority we have two ports in the northern part of the Netherlands, in the area Eemshaven and Delfzijl, it's called. And actually we are squeezed between Hamburg and Rotterdam. And for that reason, we said we are not going to go for container transport as a port, but we are going for other things. And we are mainly focusing on energy and data on the one hand, and chemicals, bio-based chemicals actually, and the circular economy. That are the three topics that we are focusing on as a port authority. Actually, we see ourselves more as the landlord of an industrial area or two industrial areas than as a port authority. It's good when we have new companies coming in, and if they want to use our ports, that would be great. And if not, that's also okay. So what we're trying to do is to attract new customers and to see if we can make other companies that are existing companies work together in our ports and see if they can make their process more sustainable. Now our French link actually is the link to Engie. Engie has a gas-fired plant here in our ports. Actually, we have two gas-fired plants in our port, and one coal-fired plant, but a lot of wind energy, a lot of solar energy, and two cables coming in. One from Norway, 700 megawatts from Norway, hydropower, and 700 megawatts from Denmark, also sustainable power. It's wind power actually. Here you see a picture of the Delfzijl port area. It's mainly chemicals, and we try to switch that over to bio-based chemicals and to introduce the circular industry. I will come back to that one later. These are the companies that are in this chemical park, partly Dutch companies, but also international operating companies like Tegin, for example, that are Nourion used to be Akzo Nobel. So an international operating chemical cluster. One of the newest things that we have in our ports is a new factory that just opened. It's in the circular industry. It's an innovative steel factory that actually is able to work with steel that is contaminated with asbestos. Till now, when you have steel with asbestos, we bury it. But this company is able to melt the iron, and in these temperatures where they are doing this, asbestos is falling apart in non-dangerous goods. So it's very innovative, and we're very happy that they installed their factory in our ports. But going to hydrogen, actually we have a piece of land in our ports. It's approximately 50 hectare, sorry. And in this port area, we are wanting to have new companies. One is Sky Energy. They were going to make bio-based kerosene for the aircrafts, and they do it with biological material together with hydrogen. Also, Avantium is a bio-based plant using hydrogen. Jules 2 is mentioned here. That's the second one of a hydrogen plant that is going to deliver hydrogen to, for example, Sky Energy. And North Water is a water cleaning plant. So we are investing in these days 25 million euros as a port authority in this area in order to make them these companies to fit into the system of the existing companies. This is the other port. It's the Eemshaven, a little bit to the north, mainly focusing on energy and data, but also to wind energy. So in total, we installed 17 wind parks from the Eemshaven. It's dedicated case for making and installing wind farms. On the right corner, you see Google. Google has a huge data center here and expanding this data center nowadays. In total, an investment of 2.5 billion. And good to know that they are using only renewable power for this data center. So they have two existing wind farms that they have made their PPAs with these wind parks and solar parks, by the way, in order to make this data center completely green. It's a huge and interesting industry for us. Here you see another picture. The 3 blocks above are the existing blocks that started in 2016, actually, and now they are expanding. So they're doubling their capacity, and they also made an announcement that they will even enlarge it. This will be the biggest data center of Google in Europe. So here you see the pictures of the windmill parts that are installed. Also, it's mostly in the German waters, but also now the biggest park is installed. It's Hornsea 2 in the UK, actually from our ports. So offshore wind is very interesting for us, and especially when it's dedicated to the hydrogen. I'll come back to that one later. We also will install now an offshore wind innovation center where people can learn how to deal with offshore wind. In the Netherlands, we try to solve the CO2 problems in different ways. And the minister, you see a picture of our Minister of Economic Affairs and Climate Control. He asked the industry come up with ideas how to reduce the CO2 emissions. And in our area, so they divided the Netherlands in 5 areas. I was the chairman of the area in our ports to see and to come up with ideas. And of course, hydrogen is one of the solutions for our CO2 problems. In total, we work together with 26 companies to see and to come up with their ideas. How can we reduce CO2? And there was a very interesting situation. Actually, on the bars on the left down corner, you see the actually CO2 emission of our area, and it already went down from 1990 to 2019. But we expect that it will even go down to 2030 a little bit further. And but in the same time, in the right down corner, you see the production volume. It's going up. So per ton production, we are reducing CO2. Already we did 54% per CO2 reduction per ton. And in our expectations, based on the projects that the companies have announced in our area, we will go to minus 73% so in 2030. And how do we do it? Actually, as a port authority, we are the owners of an infrastructure in order to let the companies work together. It's a system of, for example, nitrogen, steam, compressed air, saline water, industrial water, but now also a hydrogen backbone, where we can supply companies with hydrogen. Actually, we are not the owners of the material that's flowing through these pipelines, but we are the owners of the assets. So we are working more like a TSO in our area, and making it able for several companies. So, for example, the steam pipeline, where we can reduce for this way, other companies can reduce their production of warmth. So the steam pipe is filled with by 3 companies, and we have 7 companies that use these steam pipe. So we have more ideas how we can enlarge this whole system in the future, because we're expanding the whole system. And here you see the backbone of the hydrogen backbone. Actually, the blue line is already existing. It's a hydrogen going to a pit point where hydrogen buses can tank, and that's already existing. It's a flexible pipeline. It's not made out of steel. We, our engineers, when we are trying to make this project, our engineers said, "Oh, it went too expensive to make it out of steel." And one of our engineers thought, "Why don't we do it by a plastic pipeline?" And actually, we got a plastic pipeline certified for hydrogen. You see in the right hand corner, the pipeline, and the man that's signing the pipeline, it's our king. So it must be a very good pipeline. And now we are engineering the orange line in order to connect other companies also to this hydrogen backbone. It's very cheap, actually, a tenth of the cost, because you don't have to weld it. It's just on a roll, 600 meters long. You dig just a grave, and then you can put in the pipeline. No corrosion protection, no Roentgen control if the weld is done well. So it's very, very innovative. It will last for 200 years, they told us. So we have other ideas how to connect the 2 ports together, but I want to skip this one and go to the project. It's called North H2. Here you see, by the way, sorry. Here you see the whole gas infrastructure, because in our area we found natural gas in the 60s. So the gas system is very dense, and good to know that the system is a double system. It's a system for high caloric gas and for low caloric gas. The low caloric gas is coming from the Netherlands themselves, and we will stop this low caloric gas in 2022. So these gas pipelines will be free then, and will be used for transporting hydrogen. And in the same time, we have our high caloric gas, so it's relatively easy to fade out and fade in hydrogen in the Netherlands. Yeah, we announced a project called Noord H2 together with GasUnie. It's the one that's transporting the natural gas. We as a port authority, Shell, and the province of Groningen, we're working together on a project called Noord H2. Actually, yesterday we announced that 2 newcomers will join this consortium. It's called RWE, the German energy producer, and Equinor, the former Statoil from Norway. And what are our plans? Actually, what we want to do is to make big wind farms in the North Sea, 10 gigawatt in total, and then install electrolyzers in our ports in Eemshaven. And we have a very special situation here. There is a salt mine 30 kilometers away from our ports, and we now, in these days, we are storing there, in these salt mines, we are storing natural gas, but they are also suitable for hydrogen. So we can store hydrogen, large amounts of hydrogen in these salt mines. And then we make 2 backbones. One on the left, it's going via Amsterdam, Rotterdam to Antwerp. And on the right one, it's going via Gemmelot. It's in the southern part of the Netherlands, a big chemical cluster, and then to the Ruhr area in Germany. So that makes the project relatively international. Yeah, but for that we need a lot of more wind energy, 10 gigawatt, to be installed, hopefully from Eemshaven, and of course the extension of the electricity network. But what we try to do is to install the electrolyzers nearby where it's going on, where the electricity is coming onshore, so in our ports, so you don't have to travel too much with the electrons. So we're also working on an exchange for hydrogen, so that we can trade with hydrogen. A hydrogen market we are developing in our ports. So Actually, I think there's one thing that we also do is to try to, with the supporters of the Netherlands, the Dutch national team, the Olympic gamers, we are supporting them with a lot of companies, 7 in total, in order to get hydrogen or to introduce hydrogen to the Dutch citizens. Actually. So I have to leave at 10 o'clock, but if there is one question, I would be very glad to answer them.
Maybe we can start by going through the polls that you well, the different questions that you asked.
Yep.
So maybe first question, and you can give us your opinion about it. First question was, how are inland clusters dependent on clusters with an harbor location regarding green hydrogen? There was 3 possible answer: none, middle, and highly. And 53% of people said highly.
I think so,
and
also
35
highly,
middle.
because at the end, the inland clusters don't have the possibility to get enough green energy. And for that, they are depending on the energy coming on shore. Because it takes a lot of time for all the permits that you need to make new electricity connections from place A to place B, it takes decades actually in the Netherlands, and in Germany also, I know. So I think we should install the electrolyzers nearby where the electricity is coming, the sustainable energy is coming in, and then transport the gas instead of the electricity.
Okay, thanks. Next question: what about the make or buy discussion? Should Europe go for own production, or should Europe be focusing on import of green hydrogen? And I would say almost obviously 86% of people said that Europe should go for its own production. I would say obviously. Yeah. You care to comment for that, Cas?
Yeah, no, of course. I think at the end we will do both. We will install because it would be relatively cheaper to make hydrogen in the places where the sun is shining a lot. But it doesn't go quick enough. So I think we should start up ourselves and make our own industry out of it. Yeah.
And last question. Again, very interesting for a new market. What should be there first? Is it demand or supply of green hydrogen? And so each answer got half of the answers, so it won't be so helpful for us.
It's the chicken and egg. It's just the chicken and egg discussion, and we and our boss say, okay, let there be a chicken and egg discussion, but we will take care of the warm nest where they all can land, where the chicken can land, and where the egg can land. So at the end, I believe that if there is supply, the demand will follow. That's normally is what we're seeing. So we also already see it now that companies are coming into our ports because we have this hydrogen backbone system, and say, okay, well, it's just a plug and play. I need hydrogen. I come to your port where I can get the hydrogen very easily. So I think we should start with the supply, and the demand will follow.
Okay. Maybe one last question is before you leave is as we understand that I mean, you presented a lot of projects, innovative projects, and those projects they all rely on cooperation between different players. You mentioned them: oil and gas company, infrastructure company, and so on. How did you ensure? How did you implement this kind of cooperation for the past, as we understood, 20 years?
Actually, what we see is we have a very sustainable goals in our port, and that meant, and that because we made a lot of presentations in the Netherlands, but also international, and then companies said, okay, we are interested to install our green IDs that we have. We want to go to your port. We don't want to go to a port area where, for example, the oil industry is very big. We want to be in a sustainable area where we can show to our customers that we're really a sustainable new industry. If that's an answer to your question.
Yes, it is. Thanks a lot, Cas. We will let you go. Thanks again for your
I have to go to
participation.
another presentation. My excuses, but thanks for being here, and I wish you a very good seminar, by the way.
Thanks a lot, Cas.
Okay.
And goodbye.
Bye-bye.
So last intervention will be from Arnaud. We will present what we do at DCbrain in terms of hydrogen and gas modeling. Arnaud, you can start whenever you want.
Okay, thanks, Benjamin. So the goal of this presentation will be to talk about digitalization and the fact that we strongly believe that old-fashioned software and algorithm won't be able to handle the changes of new gas grids, all the different changes we talked about during the last hour. Perhaps a few words on DCbrain. So we are basically a SaaS company. We are specialized in real-time complex network optimization, like energy grid, but also like supply chain networks, another kind of complex network. We developed a solution called INS for Intelligent Network Solution, which is basically a kind of live digital twin of complex network. We operate in Europe, and our customers have to manage daily networks composed of thousands of trucks, buildings, or energy flows like gas and different kind of gas. And they all struggle in operating the network under the new constraints we all know by now. And we believe that the solutions available on the markets are not able to handle that complexity. The old-fashioned way to deal with data and IT in the gas ecosystem are not able now to answer those complexity. We know how to do that, and we do it thanks to what we call hybrid AI, and we will go through that to make you perhaps see and understand what software and algorithm need to be able to answer all those very interesting and future changes. Perhaps about the issue, all the previous speaker already talked about, but I would like to start with a quote from the World Energy Market Observatory. I really like that quote that say that utilities are changing their business model from owners of large assets with predictable cash flow to portfolio manager with uncertain long-term cash flow. So basically, that's exactly what we see on the market, and what you all see on your own markets is, well, we can say that uncertainty is the new normal, that you have lots of variability, lots of intermittent due to intermittent energy sources, lots of dynamics because you have a multiplicity of providers, of energy providers, and because of that, you need to have continuous visibility and control over the different networks. And furthermore, all your customers have more and more expectation regarding the nature of the energy they consume, the source of that energy, the way they consume, their profile, their usages, etc., etc. And we all know now that hydrogen will increase that complexity, and we have to find solutions to handle that new complexity. So the common answer is digitalization. So we all think that digitalization will help us to handle that complexity. So if we talk about digitalization, we talk about data, because if digitalization is the key, then data is also the key. But we all know, that more data means also more issues. For instance, first, how will you get more data from the network? So you will need to deploy lots of new sensors for hydrogen, for instance, new chromatograph. So that's a good answer, but it's very slow to do. It's very intrusive regarding the network itself, because you need a physical intervention on the network. And it's really expensive, because if you want to repopulate all your network with those kind of new sensors, is going to cost millions or tens of millions per networks. Another way to do that is to use what we call soft sensors, is to calculate the value of the gas mix in a different point of the networks, thanks to computing and algorithm. It works, but if you want to use those data to operate daily and in real time in your networks, you need to be able to do that in super fast way. So you need a super fast state reconstruction, and we all know that state reconstruction with classical algorithm is quite long and slow. It can take hours to days to calculate those kind of value on the network. And you also need a new kind of data. You don't just need the data about the present, but also data about the future, because in order to be able to balance and anticipate the impact on the network, you need to forecast the demand, but also the production itself. Regarding the different sources and the explosion of different providers, etc. Second point, when you have those data, and once those data are clean, that's another issue, you can use them to do more accurate simulation, and you also use them to optimize your network. So two ways to do that. First one is the legacy way, the classical way. So you use a classical simulator. So it's very reliable, very robust, because you use physical laws to calculate those data, but it's very slow, and those kind of approaches are not able to handle data well. The other way to do that is to use AI. So AI by design use data. It's super fast to calculate, but it's what we call a kind of statistical approach. And it's really risky to operate a physical network only with a statistical approach. And once you know that, and when you want to switch to a multiple energy grid, you know that the multiplication of the kind of energy used by the network makes it too complex to be operated by a simple human being, and far also too complex to be optimized by a classical solver. So one good approach to do that is an hybrid approach, what we call hybrid AI. So what is hybrid AI in 2 words? Well, the first public the first time the public see the hybrid AI in action was when Google defeats the world Go champion 3 years before. So we all know that story, and most of the media told that Google used neural networks to beat the world Go champion. That's not completely true. They use a hybrid approach because they use classical, what we call operational research approach, so classical algorithm mixed with neural network. Why did they done that? Because when you want to play Go, you need to be able to respect rules and constraints of the Go game. So you can't ask a neural net to play with constraints because it's a statistical view. So it's a mix between classical algorithms that are able to follow rules and constraints, enhanced with a neural net which is able to catch a kind of superhuman intuition. And thanks to that intuition, Google was able to have a very huge accuracy with extremely fast computation time. And thanks to that, they were able to beat the world Go champion. And it's more or less the same for physics and for gas and for hybrid AI. It means that you need to mix a system that is able to respect the physical laws and also be able to catch a kind of superhuman intuition, the kind of intuition someone from the field has after 30 years of practicing how to operate a gas network. So by mixing hello? Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what is hybrid AI about, a mix between physics and machine learning. And to finish that very concretely, if we want to speaking concretely about what hybrid AI can do for gas, well, it can do almost every kind, most of digital changes of a modern grid operator, like smart anomaly detection, forecast and profile, state reconstruction, simulation, and optimization. And it can do that in a very strict respect of physical laws, and in the meantime, with the super fast computation power of a classical AI. So for instance, when you look at initial setup of that kind of digital twin, it used to take years. With that kind of approach, it can take only weeks, thanks to network data. And to calculate live results, live optimization, live simulation, forecast, etc., it used to take hours with classical solvers. It takes now seconds with the same physical accuracy. And that's it. I think I had 10 minutes only, so I've tried to be short, as I expected.
Thanks, Arnaud, a lot for the presentation. One quick question is, how much data do you need to have the system operated? And when we talk about big data, is there a specific amount of data that you need to operate?
Well, that's a very good question. Another key point of hybrid AI is that you don't need that much of data. Why? Because as you use physical laws and physical approach inside the digital twin, you can just use, well, you need to have the topology of the network, thanks to GIS data, for instance. You only need some data from the SCADA in order to calibrate all the different hybrid models, like compressor utilization, like flows or pressure on different parts of the network. And once you have those data, you are able to extrapolate and to generate new data with the hybrid approach. So you don't need that much of data. And regarding the points on the needs to deploy lots of new sensors in order, for instance, to measure hydrogen quality, with only 10% of classical coverage with sensor, you are able to calculate the hydrogen quality everywhere in the network.
Okay, thanks a lot, Arnaud. I think we have a couple more minutes before we end the webinar. I see one very interesting question for Colette about IP protection. So the question is there a strong plan to protect the IP that is created in the research and development process in the deployment and investment in hydrogen transition, obviously green hydrogen?
Well, I don't think there is a special plan to protect IP, but IP is protected. You know that it is protected already at country levels and at the European levels. So so I don't think there is a need to protect more IP, but perhaps IP will be mainly, I think, IP patents from the equipment, electrolyzers. I'm sure it is already protected by patents, perhaps on industrial processes as well. You know that software, you cannot protect very much software with patents, but it's true everywhere. I think also you need to protect IP, but you know also that protecting IP is also slowing exchanges. This is sure, because each wants to protect his own knowledge and not sharing it to others. But I think today in Europe there is already a protection of inventions and patents. You can take European patents, for example, which is much cheaper than taking a patent in France, one in Germany, one, etc. So okay.
Yeah, so there is
no specific, but I don't think it's needed. I don't
Okay.
think it's needed. It's already protected. No,
Okay.
what should be done for sure is to invest in also upfront, if you want. If you should not only invest in equipment and installation, etc., but invest more in R&D and innovation, because for €1 invested in R&D is equivalent to €10 invested in industry. So it's much cheaper to invest in industry. And I strongly believe that Europe should do what Asia countries are doing, to invest more in education, in research, in knowledge. It's, if you take the example, for example, of engineering, one campus in India, for example, is educating as much engineers as whole France, as a whole country of France. So we neglected. I said in France, perhaps that's true in other countries, but I think it's still true in Europe. We neglected this fuel of the future. And just if I have 2 seconds more, I would say, if you think of the future of this world, where we're going to have very cheap energy, because if it's solar and wind, it costs nothing. So where will be the tensions? Where will be the Saudi Arabia of oil? It will be in knowledge and technology. It is there that it will be. The fuel of the future is knowledge and technology. And thanks to this question, thank you, it enables me to say that we should do more in this area.
Yeah, it's I totally agree. Obviously, with that point, investing into technology on a European scale is definitely needed. There have been some talk about, for example, a data strategy for Europe and an artificial intelligence strategy for Europe, which, in my point of view, is going into the right way. I see we have a lot more questions, different types of questions. Some are about the technological side. Some are more focused on the operational side, for example, how to integrate H2 into carbon steel pipes and so on. Unfortunately, we do not have time to cover them now. We'll try to do it by mail. By the way, we are going to send to everyone the presentation which our 4 experts did today, and also we will send the replay, and we'll try to answer those questions in the replay. So again, thanks everyone for your time, especially Colette, Arnaud, and Dominique and Cas already had to leave, but thanks again, and thanks all the participants of the webinar, and have a great day to everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.